Columbine High School, April 20th, 1999.
2 hours after the shooting began, as more students managed to escape Columbine High, their stories told on live TV describe the brutality inside.
My brother, if he could have done something more, that he would have. So, and there's probably a lot of people that have a lot of survivor's guilt and stuff like that.
Its deadly legacy still echoes today.
SWAT teams combing every inch, searching for students, suspects, alive or dead.
Everything's out of our hands. Everything's in God's control. And you just kind of have to take it as it is, and then move forward, move on from there, and try to be better and do better, from that point forward.
We are here at the Columbine Memorial, right outside of Columbine High School, and I'm here with Patrick Tomlin, whose brother was John Tomlin, one of the victims of the Columbine shooting. One of the things that has really struck me about this recent Parkland shooting is how eerily similar it has been to the Columbine shooting. Now, mental health problems, SSRIs, violent video games, families that weren't paying attention to their children. It's very similar, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, it's very similar. At least one of the shooters was definitely on some sort of antidepressant, some sort of psychiatric medication. So, and same with pretty much every other mass shooter. There's a huge problem.
Speaking about the violence and the threats of violence that were made against the students and classmates at Columbine, as well as threats of violence that were made against the students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, there were threats that were made.
With the shooters in Columbine, there was videos that they had produced for school projects, and and it was almost, it was public to the teachers and the principal and everything, and nothing was done about it. When it's thrown in your face, the violence that's just portrayed there, it should cause for some concern.
How do you feel about the fact that we rely so heavily on law enforcement for our safety, but sometimes they just don't show up and do the right things at the right time? It is illegal to commit and to make terroristic threats. That's actually a crime. So what we have to ask ourselves is, why didn't law enforcement go ahead and make the arrests and charge these people with terroristic threats? Why are we calling for more laws, more gun control, when we don't even have our own law enforcement following the laws that we have on the books that would have protected these type of things from happening?
I'm not sure how long it took the police to get into Columbine, as far as literally, but they sat out there for 4 hours. I had an uncle who passed away a few years ago, but he was a detective in Milwaukee, and we went into the library after they kind of tore everything out, and he was just shaking his head and telling, he's like, man, they messed up really bad, and they had snipers out there, and you had hundreds of police officers, and you can't tell me 100 police officers can't walk into a building and deal with a handful of people, even if it was more than what they thought. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
At the Parkland shooting, one of the coaches actually dove and tried to run at the shooter. Now, if this coach had had a firearm, he very well could have neutralized the shooter before he was able to hurt or kill more students.
Some teachers do in certain schools out here are carrying now.
Yes, that's right. Actually, many schools in the area of Colorado have already started implementing programs such as FASTER, which is supposedly so that they can get to the shooter and neutralize the threat faster than the police would be able to in many areas that are rural. And that was one of the main complaints and issues that many had following Columbine, was how long it took police to actually, go in and stop the shooter. The police were there within 5 minutes of the first shots that were fired at Columbine, but many of them were outside and they didn't go in because they exchanged gunfire with the shooters, and they were worried about sending their men in and them getting killed. Whereas the teachers, the faculty in the school, they knew firsthand what was going on. They knew that, how many or who was shooting. They had a better knowledge of that information than the police would have outside. It really kind of argues for teachers being able to carry firearms.
My brother was hiding underneath the table because the table that he was under with, the person he was with, survived. She was shot like 9 times, I believe. She's told us that John, my brother, got out from underneath the table and approached the shooters, and of course, well, that didn't, another person's no match for, people with, Tech 9 and multiple shotguns. But even if any of those students who had any kind of training would have easily been able to engage, those shooters also. I'm not saying that, students need to be carrying, firearms necessarily, but teachers, definitely, why not?
It really kind of reminded me of how there were many reports of the Columbine shooters actually going around and asking people if they believed in God, and then based on their response, shooting them, like they did with Rachel, who was tragically killed in the Columbine shooting. And her story really speaks to me because she was so brave that when they asked her if, she believed in God and mocked her for her faith, she said, I do. And then they killed her. And I just say, wow, how strong she was to be fearless in the face of that evil and to say, yes, I do believe in God. And how it is a spiritual battle. And, many people do pray when these tragedies happen. And, sadly, we've seen some Democrats out there mocking people praying, sending prayers, saying prayers aren't enough. We need gun control. I mean, how does that make you feel?
Well, they obviously don't know what they're talking about because, they've never been in this situation, and they've never, haven't necessarily had to rely on their faith for comfort and understanding, and they're just politicizing the events. And when you say prayer's not enough, and I was like, well, how do you know? We can't, gauge by a meter what God is not doing in everybody's lives, So just people just don't know what they're talking about.
Do you think that if they would have known that teachers or staff were armed at Columbine, do you think that they would have chose that as a place to commit that crime?
Of course not. Nobody's gonna go into a place knowing that what they're planning, it could be ended very quickly, without any damage or minimal damage. That's why it always happens in a gun-free zone.
Some people might ask, how can you still be pro-Second Amendment after your brother was killed during the Columbine shooting?
I never blamed guns, and I don't think my parents did either. I mean, they knew the evil in the world and what took my brother's life, and so that's not the issue. Is guns are not the issue. So I still support guns and people's ownership, being legal and lawful.
What would you say to the family members that lost some of their loved ones during the Parkland shooting, and many of the students that lost their friends during the Parkland shooting, that are struggling right now and having a hard time, and that are kind of falling into this trap of thinking that gun control is going to make everything better?
Yeah, I feel their pain. I was there. I would say, it's an extremely emotional time at this point, and it's really hard to make, solid judgment calls. We don't have all of the information yet. And sometimes it takes years to even get all of that information. So jumping to any conclusions and saying just instantaneously that guns are going, gun control would have prevented this, you can't say that. Like I said, I never blamed the firearms in my brother's death. I blamed the people who did it. That's just a surface level, item. You got to look much deeper. Same with kitchen knives. I mean, everybody's got them. They're in everybody's houses. I know in China they don't have mass shootings, but they do have mass stabbings, and a lot of people die. So you can't take away everything. You can't take away everybody's ability to do everything themselves. Everybody has to have their own personal freedom, or you're not going to end up with the country anymore. It's going to end up turning into a third world country where everybody, like Venezuela, everyone's starving to death. Nobody can do anything. The government's taking over, taking control, and that's what we want to prevent. you know, just give it some time, let the dust settle a little bit, and just be really wary of, people wanting to push a very specific narrative right off the bat. Just be very cautious, and just protect yourself. Last week, or it might have been early this week, when my daughter's school had some sort of threat, and then a bunch of police officers were stationed at all the entrances to the school. So I'm continuing to be affected, by my experience, and then everybody else's experiences with this major issue with people just being stupid. You can call in a threat and have the police show up. It's unlikely that someone's going to do something with the police already there, but it just kind of gives you a stark reminder of what people are capable of, and that it couldn't happen to you, or it could happen to your family more than once. You just hope and pray that that doesn't happen.
Since the time of Hippocrates, the father of modern Western medicine, in 420 BC, the ancients have marveled at the power of whey protein from milk and cheese. That's why I'm so proud to announce the latest addition to the Infowars Life family, True Whey Protein from Infowars Life. It's produced right here in the United States of America under the strictest high-quality organic conditions. Our True Whey Protein from Infowars Life contains a whopping 20 grams of protein per serving. We went out and did massive research and found the very best company and facility to develop our whey. And it took us years to finally get contacts with some of the larger, most respected companies to bring you a super high-quality whey protein at a very reasonable price. That way you get the benefits and the taste of high-quality whey while supporting our information warfare operation against the globalists. Doing our research, one thing continued to really stand out. It's not just that cows and their milk are associated with the best, highest quality protein, but also that those cows be grass-fed. That is essential. And all of this whey protein comes from grass-fed happy cows. This is the very best way that we were able to bring to market. Please try it for yourself and tell us what you think. Again, thank you so much for all your support. It is True Whey from InfoWarsLife.com.